Hello and welcome to Pickle's Garage. Today we're working on my 1979 GMC C3500, the Sierra Grande, specifically on a thing called Runon or dieseling. I'm going to go over what it is specifically, what it takes for it to happen, short-term fixes, as well as diagnosing my specific problem, and then I'll give you the long-term fixes. So let's go ahead and dive into it. So what is run-on? Well, run-on is a situation where the engine runs for a few seconds to even a few minutes after you turn off the vehicle. Now, the best way to pinpoint it is to think of the three different things that you need for an engine to run, right? There's compression, which is easy, right? We can kind of eliminate that one because there's the momentum the engine is still allowing for there to be compression. The other two are going to be spark and fuel. So a situation where fuel is still getting in might be where your engine is running a little bit too rich, right? Your idle screw is a little bit too deep, and therefore there's enough fuel for it to still kind of be in the system to get pulled into the cylinder and eventually ignite. The other thing, spark, is going to be a little bit more complicated. There's a handful of ways that we'll test that, but let's go ahead and focus on fuel first. So starting with what is likely my issue, I believe that my idle screw is a little bit too far in advance. I'm running a little bit fuelier. I do that naturally just because I like starting easier, but you'll notice I do have an electric choke, so that's really just old bad habits. I'm used to having a manual choke and then not having the choke hooked up, so normally I have to put a lot more fuel in my system before it runs. The idea is that your idle screw should almost be barely over your car shutting off. That would be the most ideal for fuel efficiency, is just having it right on the rugged edge before your vehicle would, choke and die, and then maybe a little bit more on that just so you run less risk with changing temperatures and whatnot. But I definitely run a little bit fuelier. But what that causes issues with is fuel is now a lot more available for the vehicle to pull in once I shut it off. So we're going to adjust the idle screw. It's right here. Pretty easy, just any sort of screwdriver. Think of it almost like having your foot on the gas pedal. And so the more you turned it in, it's more like putting more pressure on the gas pedal. And that's just where you're starting from. So that would be when you're idling, it would be like your foot being like here. But we can always back it down a little bit more by go ahead and loosening it. So that's all we're doing. So I'm going to go ahead and get it running, and then you'll be able to see the changes in the sound with the adjustments to that screw. So running pretty aggressively, and we'll go around here. Like I said, just a simple screwdriver here. Keep out of the fan. Make sure you don't have loose clothing, but I'm just going to back it down ever so slightly. And you can hear a lot more relaxed. So that's a little bit more calm. And I'll just periodically make the adjustments as I need. So that should definitely help. Now let's move on to the next thing, spark. All right, so now let's focus on spark. So spark can be a little misleading, but I'll go over how exactly an engine is providing said spark real quickly. So essentially, HEI distributor is taking power from the battery and in through a cable right up on this side. It's going to have battery on the top. And when your vehicle is running, it has a rotor on the inside that is sending signal to each of your wires here that is then carrying that spark to a spark plug that is then igniting inside the engine, right? And so for your vehicle to be still sparking, it could be really one of two things. It's either there's still enough energy that is being sent down, and it's still usually a very weak spark, but it's still creating enough of a spark because it's getting power directly from the battery that it's still causing ignition. Now, the other thing that could be happening is it could be a situation where you have a lot of carbon buildup, right? Like maybe you've been running fairly poor gas, or again, the vehicle has been running too rich. It creates sort of like a cakey black film on the pistons, and that creates almost like a tiki effect, right, where it's still a little bit lit. So Basically, the explosion happens, that carbon is burning a little bit, ever so faintly, and by the time it comes up, it's still enough to ignite and send another signal. So we could check for that, and there's going to be a couple solves for each of these that I'll go over. But I'm going to go ahead and take a camera, and I'm going to pull the number 1 cylinder spark plug, check in there, see if I see any of that carbon buildup. Ideally, you check all the cylinders, but I should get a very good idea just from looking at one. So let me go ahead, pull that spark plug, put my camera in there, and you'll see if I have the buildup. Now, you can get these cameras pretty cheap on Amazon or something similar, not too expensive. Basically, they just have an app, and then you plug them in, and you can go ahead and check. The other thing you could do is you can check the plug itself, right? So if you don't have the camera, you could still look at the plug and see if you notice a lot of black that is not wet. So if it's like an oily type leak, or it's like an oily type feel where it's coming off like that and it's wet, then that wouldn't be related to what I'm talking about. It's going to be like a sooty sort of thing. So you'll see it's coming off a little bit, and that's dry. So that is a little bit of carbon buildup, which is to be expected in a small amount of quantities. That's why it's kind of hard to tell from the spark plug. But when we look in, we'll be able to see if it is an alarming amount. So let's go ahead and check right now. So we'll go ahead and look into cylinder 1 here. You'll see right now is the wall looks pretty clean. This is a recent rebuild, so you're about to see the head of the piston itself. Right there was a glimpse, and that's a better shot. So you'll see this is not my issue. So as you saw, I don't have the issue of having that carbon buildup. If you did have that issue, what you can do to resolve it is you can run higher octane gas in your engine for a little while. That would just be more premium fuel. What you could also do is there's those fuel additives that you can find literally anywhere, any automotive store, and you could run those through a full tank of gas a couple times, and that should help clean up the carbon buildup enough to eliminate your issue. Now, because I didn't have that issue, we have to move on to the next reason why I might still have spark, and that would be something related to a little bit of the alternator and also to an HEI distributor. So let me go into those details. So this was an issue between 1973 and 1983. Now, vehicles after that point had alternators that had an internal voltage regulator, and so it wasn't an issue when you switched to an HEI distributor type for it to eliminate that voltage once the vehicle was turned off. But 1973, 1983, this falls right in line with that. So what you would need to add, and it comes with the kit, but of course I throw those away, or I lose them, I set them aside. But when you buy an HEI distributor, then it's supposed to come with a thing called a diode, and I will show you that right now. So hopefully you're better at keeping track of what your MST came with, but if you just bought the vehicle or you lost it like I did, then here is an online version that has it, where you just go ahead and get that spliced in. Or you can do this, which comes with sort of plugs, makes it a little bit easier, more of a plug and play. The black is the diode itself, and then the red being the power wire, of course, and both right around 20 to 30 bucks. So what a diode does is it is an external voltage regulator, and so they're pretty easy to install. They would just go on this wire right here. It's usually like a brown, or in this case a black, and it would just be in line. And so you would just disconnect your negative side of the battery, snip one side, snip the other, and then have that diode right here in line with that, and that should eliminate that issue. Now, that's certainly part of my problem, because naturally you have to have spark and fuel. So fuel is likely my other issue, which we addressed earlier. And so the combination of changing my idle screw and inputting the diode right here is, I believe, going to solve my issues. But like I said, there can be several different factors as far as the carbon buildup, just running better gas, doing a fuel additive, and then addressing your spark concerns. Some people also mentioned timing has something to do with it. You can look into that as well, just adjusting your timing speed and seeing if that corrects it. But these should be the main contributors to run-on or dieseling. Now, for your short-term solves, if you just need to not be embarrassed at the gas pump or when you're with your buddies, you could basically leave your vehicle in drive and then turn it off. And the combination of the resistance that your transmission gives the engine, just because it's very weakly running, that should be enough to stall it out. So you'll see a lot of time people will kind of pull up and they'll turn off the vehicle while still rolling. and that's usually to kind of eliminate that run-on. The other thing that you can do if it's lasting minutes is you can go ahead and disconnect the negative side of your battery. That should take away any power that's going in, and as long as it's not the carbon buildup process, then that should also shut off your engine. So hopefully this was helpful just to give you a frame of mind of what you should be looking for to go ahead and eliminate these issues. But thank you very much for watching. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.